your anxiety. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense, because what do you do with a fishing rod? You reel it back in. And that's not the idea. No, wait a minute. But yeah, if you think about it, that's kind of what we do sometimes, isn't it? Well, something's on our hearts, and you're like, okay, I just got to pray about it. I'm going to pray about it. That's whole situation. Oh, wait a minute. No. And you try to own it. It's interesting. The word cast in the Greek literally means this, and you can write this down. Cast is to transfer the weight. Cast means to transfer the weight. And here's the idea. You're carrying something. You're holding on to something that's weighing you down. It's bringing you stress and anxiety. Remember, anxiety is your flashing warning light. Something's going on. So you take that problem, that's what's weighing you down, you pick it up. God, here you go. I can't handle it. And you give it to Him. And you walk away. Now, the whole idea about casting is that we don't go kind of like a mechanic. We don't take our car to the mechanic and then you say, can I pull up a chair? And you sit there and you see him watching him work on it. You're like, oh, no. I don't know if you should do that. Here, let me show you. Right? But yeah, isn't that kind of what we do with God? We say, okay, God, you can have that. Oh, wait. I don't like how you're doing that. Perhaps maybe you should do it this way. We have two choices. Either we carry it or we cast it. Either we carry our worries and anxiety or we cast our worries and anxiety to God. That's the two choices. Because you can't hold on to it and say, okay, God, take it. Take it. Take it. Right? So the two choices. Carry it or cast it. Hold on to it or transfer it. My prayer for us is that we will grow into casting all our anxieties on Him. This is a process, I believe, for some of us, for a lot of us. Why not all of us? Where we learn how to cast all. And maybe we're in a season, in a place in our spiritual walk right now where we only cast some. But God wants us to get to the point where we cast all. Why? Because He cares for us. So how do we do that? Verse 6 tells us. 1 Peter 5 verse 6 says, humble yourself, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that He may lift you up in due time. I love that imagery. That He, with His mighty hand, will lift you up. if anybody knew what that meant, it was Peter. Because remember, Peter and his other buddies were going across the Sea of Galilee. In the middle of the night, a big storm comes up, and Jesus nowhere to be found. He was off praying, and all of a sudden, they're rocking, and the waves are they're scared to death. And these are professional fishermen, most of them in the boat. And all of a sudden, they see what they think maybe is a ghost, but they realize it's Jesus. And Peter has the audacity of faith to get out of the boat and walk on water. And all of a sudden, he starts seeing these waves, and the flashing anxieties starts going off. And because his focus was not on Jesus, but on his situation, he starts to sink. And he cries out, "Save me!" Matthew 14, verse 31, gives Peter the ammunition to say, "Humble yourself, and the mighty hand of God will lift you up," because he says, immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. So Peter can say, because he had to humble himself to ask God to save him, right? To ask Jesus to save him. He's sinking. Humble yourself, Peter writes to these Christians, under his mighty hand, so he may lift you up. If there's something in your life right now that is overpowering and you're just sinking, perhaps sinking is not your problem. Perhaps you're not reaching out and crying out for help. Because this is what I'm discovering about anxiety. It's a cycle. It's a cycle. For a lot of us, this is what it looks like. You start to feel anxious about something. And you feel worried. So you try to take control of it. The problem is, the more you try to control something, the more you feel of losing control. And the more you feel of losing control, the more you try to control. And the more you try to control, the more anxious you become. Anyone. Here's the bottom line. You can write this down. There is a connection between pride and anxiety. You might not think of it that way, but if you step back and just really look at this verse, why would Peter say, humble yourself and cast all your anxieties? Because he knew that there is a connection between pride and anxiety. Most of the weight of anxiety is due to pride. Because I don't know if you know this, but pride has control issues. Yes? The reason why you start feeling anxious is because you start feeling like you're out of control. Pride makes you defensive. And so you become anxious when you feel like you're being criticized. Pride makes me selfish, and I feel anxious when I don't get my way. Pride makes me stubborn, so I feel anxious when someone doesn't agree with me. Pride makes me jealous, and I start to feel anxious when someone else has success and I don't. Pride makes me critical, and I feel anxious when someone doesn't do something the way that I think it should be done. There is a connection between pride and anxiety, and there was an expert in the field of anxiety. Isn't that interesting that there's a field of expertise that study anxiety? But there is. Dr. Edward Hallwell says this: anxiety takes place when there is a heightened sense of vulnerability and a diminished sense of power. Let me read that again. Anxiety takes place when there is a heightened sense of vulnerability and a diminished sense of power. So when you find yourself in a place where you're feeling vulnerable and feel like you don't have much control or power to do anything about your vulnerability, that's when anxiety starts flashing in our lives. How many of you have ever heard of the Serenity Prayer? It's been around quite a while, and oftentimes it's used to help people in recovery. And the first part of the prayer goes like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This is where oftentimes anxiety or peace gets determined. Do I know the difference between the things I need to fix and the things I need to surrender? Things to carry or things to cast? Newsflash. If it causes you anxiety, you pretty much know the answer. Because Peter tells them, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. So maybe you're feeling anxious about your finances. And there are some things that you can change. You have that control, but then maybe perhaps there are some things that you cannot cast. Maybe you feel anxious about your health. There are some things that you can change, and there are some things you cannot cast. Maybe you're starting to feel anxious about some things in some relationships. There are some things that you can change, but then there are some things you cannot cast. if there is anxiety flashing in your life, Peter says the antidote to that is to humble yourself and give it to God. In other words, pray. Pray. Church, bottom line, many Christians have no clue the power they have in their possession when it comes to prayer. They don't understand it. That's why they don't go to prayer. That's why they carry it. If you knew the power of prayer, it would be your first response, not your last. I'm learning this. And I pray that we all learn this. Because we cannot fix everything, but we can surrender anything. Let me say that again. We cannot fix everything, but we can surrender anything. You can take it to God. So my question is for me and for us. Have you prayed about it? Have you prayed about it? It is what's stealing your joy. It is what's keeping you up at night. It is what is flashing the anxiety in your life. It is what's weighing heavy on your heart and mind. Have you prayed about it? What is it for you? Because God the Father wants you to transfer it to Him. He wants to carry that weight. He wants to help for you to find that freedom and to find that peace. Because it requires humility on your part to release it. That's not a popular poster bumper sticker phrase. I don't know how many people would slap that. Humble yourself and give it to God. Because we're prideful people. Evie likes to control things. She's a do-it-yourself kind of gal. I love that about her, and it drives me crazy. There are some things she wants to do, but she doesn't know how to yet. And then she gets upset about it. And she turns from sweet to sassy to spicy. And then she gets mad. And it is not a peaceful home when spice comes out. But eventually she'll calm down. And she'll get to the point where then she'll ask for help. I think that's a beautiful picture of how we are sometimes with God, or how God, because I would have just loved for her before the spice. Daddy, can you help me? Absolutely. Now here's the thing. After the spice, when she asked me to help, or ask Courtney to help, Mommy, can you help me? Absolutely. And it's the same with God with us. Sometimes we have ourselves a spiritual temper tantrum. And God is like, I wish you just would have asked me before the spice. But okay. I still love you. I still care for you. Let's get this done. Have you prayed about it? God, I can't handle it. But you can. I don't know what to do with it. I'm trusting that you do. Psalm 56 verse 3 says, but when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. Really, that's what prayer is. It's a humble trust. Prayer simply is a humble trust. Peace comes when you pray about it instead of trying to control it. Last week, the verse that we focused on was Philippians 4, 6 through 7. And I want to revisit this verse because it pairs very nicely with what we're talking about. Verse 6, do not be anxious about anything, but in what? Every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. What are requests? Lord, I need. Verse 7. This is the byproduct. And the peace of God. Who wants peace? Who wants peace of mind, peace of heart, peace of spirit, peace of life? You may need professional help if you don't. Because God has wired us for peace. And the peace of God that which transcends all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. James Cash Penney. Some of you may know him as J.C. Penney. He made some really unwise decisions and business deals that led him into a very stressful life. That led to depression, that led to shingles. Because remember, anxiety can bring out some bad physical things in your life. We talked about that last week. He developed shingles. Went to the doctor says, whoa, we're going to put you in the hospital. So he's in the hospital, and the sedative that they gave him wore off in the middle of the night, and he wakes up in pain, thinking he's going to die. So he starts doing business by writing his family letters. And finally, after writing his letters, he drifts off to sleep, And surprisingly, he wakes up the next morning. He wasn't expecting that. So he wakes up to a song. God will take care of you. The chapel was just a few doors down from his room. And people were in there, and that was the hymn, God will take care of you. Intrigued him. He wheels down there, sets in, listens to the singing, listens to the message. God got a hold of his heart, and he says later, as I sat, him quoting this, as I sat in the chapel, I realized that I alone was responsible for my condition. I gave my troubles to God because I knew that God was the one who was with me, and his love was there to help me. End quote. He went on to say that from that day forward, he did not worry or struggle with anxiety because he realized God cared for him. And that's the message I want us to walk away with today. Because some of us is feeling and sensing that flashing light of anxiety in our lives. And one of the first things that we do is we forget God when we become overwhelmed. Today, I want you to marinate in that in your spirit. You can write this down. Give it to God because he cares for you. After you write it down, I want you to turn to your neighbor and say it. Give it to God because he cares for you. Give it to God because he cares for you. He knows what the it is. You know what the it is. The person that said it to you may not know what the it is, but that's okay. Give it to God because he cares for you. You have to decide if you believe that statement. God cares for you. You have to decide that. Is he a God who is close, who's personal, who is a caring father? Or is he a God that is distant and he is limited? Yeah, he may have created the universe, but can he handle my situation? Humble yourself, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. I want to close with a quote with John Piper. We're running a little late today, but that's okay. This can change the course of someone's life. John Piper says this: casting your anxiety on God means trusting the promises that he cares for you and has the power and the wisdom to put that care to work in the most glorious ways. That trust is the opposite of pride. It is the essence of humility. It is the confidence that the mighty hand of God is not over you to crush you, but to care for you. That's a big difference. Just like the promise says, don't be proud, but cast your anxiety on him because he cares for you.